I'll never forget the day I started working at BreadTalk. It was a prestigious restaurant in the heart of the city, known for its delectable cuisine and elegant ambiance. The restaurant was housed in a historic building, an old Victorian mansion that had been converted into a dining establishment. It was the kind of place that attracted the rich and famous, and I was thrilled when I landed a job there as a server. My first night on the job was a whirlwind of excitement and nerves. The manager, a stern man named Mr. Rutherford, gave me a quick tour of the place. The restaurant was dimly lit, with ornate chandeliers hanging from the high ceilings. The walls were adorned with vintage paintings, and the air was filled with the soft murmur of conversations and the clinking of cutlery. As the evening went on, I quickly learned the ropes of the job. I had to weave my way through the maze of tables, balancing trays of gourmet dishes and expensive wine glasses. The diners were a mix of well-dressed couples, celebrating anniversaries and business deals, and families who wanted a taste of luxury. It was during my third week at BreadTalk that I noticed something peculiar. One evening, as I was taking an order from a couple at a corner table, I caught a glimpse of a man sitting alone at the bar. He seemed out of place in this upscale establishment. His clothes were tattered, and he had a scruffy beard that reached down to his chest. But what truly caught my attention were his eyes. They were wild, filled with a strange intensity as they darted around the room. I couldn't help but stare, and as our eyes met, a shiver ran down my spine. There was something unsettling about that man, something that sent a chill through my bones. He seemed to be watching everyone, studying them with an eerie focus. I quickly averted my gaze and continued with my duties, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Over the next few weeks, I saw the same man at the bar on multiple occasions. Each time, his appearance grew more disheveled, his eyes more haunted. It was as if he were a specter, haunting the restaurant, and I couldn't understand why Mr. Rutherford and the other staff didn't seem to notice or care about his presence. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I approached one of the older waiters, Maria, who had been working at BreadTalk for years. She was a kind woman with a wealth of experience, and I felt comfortable confiding in her. "Maria," I whisper as I leaned in close, "have you noticed that man at the bar? The one who's been coming here for weeks?" Maria gave me a puzzled look. "What man are you talking about, dear?" I pointed discreetly towards the bar, but when I looked back, the man was gone. I was left standing there, feeling foolish and paranoid. "Never mind," I mumbled, retreating to the safety of the waitstaff station. That night, as I was leaving the restaurant, I caught a glimpse of the man again. He was standing across the street, staring at BreadTalk with a haunting intensity. His eyes seemed to pierce through the darkness, locking onto mine for a brief, chilling moment. I hurried away, my heart pounding in my chest. The strange encounters with the man continued to escalate. I began to see him not only at the restaurant, but also on the streets near my apartment. It was as if he were following me, a dark presence lurking in the shadows. My nerves were on edge, and I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched, that something terrible was about to happen. One evening, as I was clearing a table near the bar, I overheard a conversation between Mr. Rutherford and one of the regular customers, a wealthy businessman named Mr. Sinclair. "Rutherford, you must do something about that man at the bar," Mr. Sinclair said, his voice hushed but filled with urgency. Mr. Rutherford glanced over at the bar, his expression troubled. "I've tried," Mr. Sinclair, but he keeps coming back. I've called the police, but they say there's nothing they can do unless he causes trouble. Mr. Sinclair leaned in closer. I've done some digging. That man, he's dangerous. He's been involved in some very unsavory activities. I fear for the safety of the patrons and staff here. My heart raced as I listened to their conversation. What kind of place had I gotten myself into? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was trapped in a nightmare with no way out. As the days turned into weeks, the sense of impending doom grew stronger. I could feel it in the air, a thick, suffocating presence that hung over BreadTalk like a dark cloud. The other staff members seemed to be oblivious to it, going about their duties with practiced smiles, but I knew that something was terribly wrong. One fateful evening, as I was clearing a table, I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. Startled, I turned to see the man from the bar standing behind me. His eyes were no longer wild, but filled with a strange sadness.
I must leave this place, he whispered, his voice trembling.
I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Fear held me in its icy grip as I stared into those haunted eyes. They're all in danger, he continued, his voice desperate. You must warn them. Before I could respond, he vanished into the crowd, leaving me shaken and terrified. I knew I had to do something, but what could I possibly do? I was just a server, a newcomer to this world of privilege and opulence. That night, as I walked home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. The streets were empty, and the darkness seemed to close in around me. Every shadow held a threat, every whisper of the wind a sinister message. When I reached my apartment, I locked the door and sat in the dimly lit living room, my mind racing. I had to warn the patrons and staff of BreadTalk, but how? I couldn't go to the police. They would think I was insane. I needed proof, something that would convince them that the danger was real. The next day, I decided to follow the man from the bar. I needed to know who he was and why he was so obsessed with BreadTalk. It was a risky plan, but I was desperate. I tracked him to a rundown apartment building on the outskirts of the city. From a safe distance, I watched as he entered the building. I waited for what felt like hours, my heart pounding in my chest. Finally, he emerged, carrying a tattered old journal. He looked around nervously, as if he could sense that he was being watched. Then, he got into a beat-up old car and drove away. I waited a few more minutes before cautiously approaching the building. I managed to find the door he had entered and went inside. The hallway was dimly lit, with peeling wallpaper and a musty smell that made my stomach turn. I found the apartment he had come out of and cautiously opened the door. Inside, I discovered a small, cluttered room. The walls were covered in newspaper clippings and photographs, all connected by a web of string. It was like something out of a detective movie. As I examined the clippings, a chilling realization washed over me. They were all related to BreadTalk news articles about the restaurant, photos of the staff and patrons, even sketches of the layout. It was as if the man had been conducting some sort of twisted investigation into the place. I quickly snapped photos of the evidence with my phone and then fled the apartment. My mind was racing as I realized the gravity of what I had discovered. I had proof that something sinister was happening at BreadTalk, and I needed to share it with someone who could help. That night, I went to the police with the evidence. They were skeptical at first, but couldn't ignore the mounting information I had gathered. They launched an investigation into BreadTalk, and Mr. Rutherford and some of the staff were taken in for questioning. As the investigation unfolded, the truth came to light. BreadTalk had been a front for a powerful criminal organization. They had been using the restaurant to launder money and conduct illegal activities right under the noses of the unsuspecting patrons. Mr. Sinclair, the businessman, had been trying to expose them, which is why he had been so desperate to get rid of the mysterious man at the bar, who turned out to be an undercover investigator. The criminals running BreadTalk were arrested, and the restaurant was shut down. It was a shocking scandal that rocked the city and made headlines for weeks. I thought my ordeal was finally over, but the aftermath of that discovery haunted me. The feeling of impending doom that had hung over BreadTalk was replaced by a sense of betrayal and loss. I couldn't forget the eerie atmosphere of the restaurant or the haunted eyes of the man at the bar. I moved on with my life, finding work at a different restaurant far away from the city. But the memories of BreadTalk and the chilling events that had unfolded there still haunted my dreams, a constant reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath even the most prestigious facades.